Alright, so I'm going to do a video. I'm going to do a video on how to pass the NASM. I'm going to review the hardest part of the NASM, and the hardest part of the NASM actually is the overhead squat assessment. The overhead squat assessment means you need to understand human movement really well, and I wanted to make a video to help improve, basically quiz you and help you understand kind of what you need to do to get a better overhead squat analysis and understand the movements better. So let's go over the chart. I'm going to be using the CES chart. This is a very advanced chart. I'm not exactly sure if this is what's going to be on NASM, but this is a NASM test. It's a more advanced test. Sorry if you can't see that focus really well. But it's a more advanced test, and what that is essentially going to show you kind of a more in-depth view of what the overhead squat assessment is, and I'm hoping that you get something out of this video to help you pass the test. Okay, so the feet turn out. When the feet turn out, what's that mean? That means the calves are tight. If they are tight, what do we need to strengthen? There's not a whole lot you need to strengthen because the feet are always going to be, well, if they're tight, because usually the things about the feet are essentially the feet will either move out or they will come off the ground. The heel will rise, and that means the calves are tight. Typically, you'll get a little bit of both. You'll also see feet flattening. And as much as I really want to get into discussion about kind of human anatomy and physiology and human movement, and I would love to talk about that stuff, but as great as that discussion would be, it may not be very good for helping you pass the test because I might end up just confusing you and making things more difficult. So I'll try my best to control some of my kind of not off topic, but a little bit side rants on human movement. But feet turn out, calves are tight. Okay. Second, knees move inward. Now this is from the front view, so you need to do. So knees move inward or they move outward. Okay, so when the knees move inward, what's that mean? The knees are coming together, right? They're adding to the body. This is how I remembered it. Knees adding to the body. Knees adducting. Adduction. So when the knees move inward, you're adding to the body. Adduction means that the knees are moving inward. What muscles are tight in the legs? The adductors. Make sense? So that's how I remember. If you're doing shoulder adduction, knees, a whole lot of space here. My webcam doesn't do really good focusing, so you got to bear with me here. Knees move inward. They're adducting. And really what you're looking for the knees adducting is you're looking for the knee to move basically into the instep of the foot or not line up with the kind of shoelaces. Or I should say instep, because when you do overhead squat assessment, you're supposed to have them with their shoes off anyway. So knees move inward, adductors are tight. So if adductors are tight, what stabilizes the knee to not go inward? Think about what muscles do that. If you're just, again, as much as you can study this chart and memorizing, if you're good at memorizing, you're probably going to be fine. But if you have trouble memorizing charts, like me, because I have trouble memorizing stuff that doesn't make sense, I have to feel it, okay? I have to feel it, touch it, show people, and teach it. That's how I learn. That's how I pass the test. I pass the test by practicing with other people. The knees move inward, so think about if you stand up really quick, or you can imagine standing up, or even if you're seated in your car and you're just listening to this video, and the knees moving inward, what happens when you press your knees out? What muscles do you feel? Okay? Think about that for a second. You may or may not feel anything, depending on how in tune with your body. I'm going to assume that you are because you want to be a trainer, so hopefully you train legs and you know what that feels like when you push your knees out. Another way to look at it is if you are standing. Actually, this is a good one. If you're standing, hands against your knees, and you push your knees outward, right? Because what do you feel? You're going to feel your ass, your glutes, right? So that means if your knees adduct, what is weak? Your glutes are weak, right? That's essentially what it is. That's how I remember. I remember by feeling and doing. What else is there? Okay, knees move outward. Now, think about knees move outward. What's that mean? The knees are adducting or moving away from the body. They're doing this, right? They're going too far out. So what is tight? The abductors. Abductors is one way of saying it to remember, because if you're like me, a little bit dyslexic, you'll confuse adductors with abductors. You can get those tongue twisted at times. But when the knees abduct or they go too far apart, what they're really doing is they're externally rotating, or the femur bone is. Because remember, the knee, you don't just move in the frontal plane, right? I don't know if the frontal plane. You actually move in transverse, sagittal, and frontal plane in different planes of motion. And when the knee moves outward, it doesn't. I don't have a good. When the knees move outward, it's not really moving outward. It's actually externally rotating too much. And think about what the muscles. When the muscles externally rotate too much, what's happening? The external rotators are too tight, which are essentially the abductors. They're too tight. They're overactive. What's weak? The inner thigh muscles are underactive. Those need to be strengthened. Okay, so that's what happens when these are outward. One way to kind of remember this, and this is how I teach people, and this may or may not work for you. It's a little bit different for everybody with how they learn. There's this thing called pennation. When the way the muscles pennate, it's like think about cabling. Like I got here some knee wraps here, and just imagine this is a long muscle fiber, and I have a little anatomy chart here, right there, this guy right there, and we'll just take a look at his bicep, right there, right? You see how the fibers run up and down, right? I can't really do this. Okay, they move up and down like this, right? Just imagine that as a band, right? And then when it gets tight, when the muscles get tight, what happens, or when they contract, they will shorten. It's not really a good example, but when they lengthen, they'll stretch. Contract, relax. Contract, relax. That's basically what's happening. And that's how, and you look at the way they pennate, that's the direction the fibers run. And I'm teaching you this for the simple reason of the glutes. I have the posterior here, rear view, the ass view of the body. And look at the hips here, right? You've got the glutes. Look at where they attach. They attach right here in the center of the thoracic lumbar fascia, right? Some in this spot here in the pelvis, and then they rotate. They actually go to the side. So think about this muscle shortening. If this muscle is shortening, what will happen to this leg? If this muscle shortens, gets shorter, or they contract, what will happen to the leg? What will happen is this leg will turn this way, or externally rotate or abduct. So you can say that the glutes are tight. Typically, it's not the glutes that they're looking for. Let's take a look at the chart just to make sure we get these answers right, because this is what you have to memorize. Okay, so knees moving outward can be kind of hard to memorize sometimes, but let's think about this for a second. The external rotators, they move the knee outward. Those are typically the glutes. And the big one, not the glutes, the internal rotator to the hip, which is the piriformis. Okay? And then the adductor complex has trouble stabilizing the knee, so the knee kind of moves too far out. Very uncommon. Doesn't happen too much, but it's something you do need to remember. And what I was going with this whole the knees moving outward thing was the way the fibers pennate. When they activate, what's going to happen is the knee is going to move. It's going to rotate the arm, or rotate the leg in this case. Okay, so let's go down the list. Excessive forward lean. So when someone squats and they excessive forward lean, what causes someone to pitch forward too much? Typically the flexors of the hip, okay? Because the way they attach is they attach right here into the femur bone and into the spinal cord right here on the inside of the spinal cord. That's your psoas. And you also have the muscles of your rectus femoris, your hip flexors. They get tight. What will happen is they will hyperextend the back, and it will make you want to lean forward or hyperextend. So that will be low back arching or forward lean. They're essentially sort of the same thing. There's a lot of things that are going on, but just remember, forward lean and low back arching are essentially in the same category and also have the same associated muscles. So in this case, let me go over this list again. Excessive forward lean means typically the hip flexors and what will make you pitch forward as well. Think about this for a second. Let's say my hip flexors are not tight. Can't even see me. Watch how I'm going to squat, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tippy toe. Watch what happens to my body. See how I lean forward if I tippy toe? Can't see that on camera because my webcam, because I don't have enough space here right now. So the calves will be tight and the hip flexors will be tight if you excessive forward lean. That's very common. Okay. Next on the list we have low back arches. I just went over that. Hip flexors are tight. Low back rounds. This is very uncommon. It doesn't happen a whole lot. When the low back rounds, what's happening? The low back rounding is hamstrings being tight and adductor complex being tight. The way you're going to remember a lot of this stuff has to do with your pelvis and all the muscles that attach to the pelvis. And A lot of the muscles in the back, like the adductors here, because you got to remember the leg is round, right? It's not flat. Even though this diagram here has the hamstrings and adductors here are tight, and then they rotate. You know, they're just round. Okay, you get the idea. It's round. Anyway, so if you look at me, I'll stand on here. Maybe this will help me out. You can see my leg. All this stuff here gets tight. They attach into the hip and into the pelvis here, into the glutes. And when they attach here and they get tight, they will pull the pelvis downwards. They will roll. They're super tight. All these muscles, especially the hamstrings, will roll the hips underneath and make the lower back round as the person squats. All right? That's how you can remember it. Just think about where the muscles attach and the way the muscle fibers tendinate. If I could show you, actually I do have a really great anatomy app. It's $20 though, but it's totally worth it if you're a nerd. Not even a fitness nerd. You have to be like a super nerd. But I actually bought this for $5, and you can't get this for $5 because you can't, because they overpriced it now because they figured out it's a really valuable app, and it's called Visible Body. You get to look at this thing. Hopefully this camera can get to rotate. Look at that. How cool is that? That's the reason why I love this, because I can sometimes when I'm not sure about something, I can look at a certain part. So the one thing I wanted to show you is the butt, and I wanted to peel a layer off the butt. Let me hide this. All right, there you go. And there you can see the piriformis right there. See that? And that's actually not what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you the hamstring muscles, which is right here. And you think about where do they attach? Where do the hamstrings and adductors attach? They attach to the pelvis. They attach to the bottom of the pelvis. That's something important to understand and remember, because when they get tight, they will pull the pelvis out of position and make it tilt backward, or tilt backward. So when the hamstrings are tight, adductors are tight, and the lower back rounds, they'll pull the pelvis this way. Okay, here we go. Again, still with lateral view, arms falling forward. They kind of fall in the same spot with excessive forward lean. Same muscles are tight, typically lats and pec major. Because remember, arms falling forward, you're also assessing the upper body as well. And when you have tight shoulders and tight chest muscles, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get this arm wanting to either bend, because that's actually, I think it's one of the ones. Actually, there used to be an assessment where it says elbow bends, but now they just have arms falling forward. When the elbow bends, that means the chest is typically tight, or if your arms are falling forward, the lats and chest are tight. Why is that? Simply because of the way the fibers pennate. Because if you look here, look where the chest is on my chart here. The chest, the fibers run into the humerus here, and that humerus actually makes it so that your arms fall forward because of where it attaches. You just can imagine bringing the hand up. It looks similar here, right? I bring my arm up here, and I'm like this. Then I go up, right? That muscle will kind of stretch out. If you've done bench press or done chest stretch, this is how you do a chest stretch. And if it's tight, what's going to happen is because of where it attaches, it's going to pull down and fall forward. That's why the arms fall forward. Also, the lats attach right here into the humerus, and they will fall forward because it stretches the lats. That is the reason why you need to understand human movement. If you know what all the muscles do, it will help. As I get deeper into this, I'm starting to wonder if this isn't helpful at all. So it might be a bit too much, but sometimes you need to hear it from somebody to learn it. Okay, so next is a forward head. The head pulling forward. What muscles are tight? Your neck muscles. There you go. Pretty simple, right? If you need to remember what they are, the levator, sternocleidomastoid, and scalenes. All this stuff. There really isn't a whole lot to remember. Just the neck muscles. One of the questions that will happen sometimes on the test, they'll ask you, if these muscles are tight, if this person has forward head, which muscles are not tight? They'll say something, not something stupid, something tricky like that. They'll say, John has forward head. Which of the following muscles are not tight? They'll say something like that and make it kind of confusing. So you got to watch out. Because I remember retaking the test. I've taken the test twice because I let it expire without renewing, and then I won the certification again, and then I passed it. Anyways, my point is, got to read the questions very carefully because they will trick the shit out of you if you're not paying attention. Forward head. Shoulders elevate. Ever do shrugs before? Right? If someone's shoulders elevate a lot if someone's shoulders elevate, what's happening? Have you done barbell shrugs or dumbbell shrugs? What are you trying to get yoked? What are you trying to get yoked, right? Big traps, big neck, right? So what's tight if your shoulders elevate? Traps, trapezius, because that's what you're doing. And if you think about this further, you can see why doing shrugs is not exactly a very good functional movement. It's very good aesthetically, but it doesn't have a very good functional movement for most human movements unless you're like doing snatches and jerks and cleans and stuff like that. It has a sports application, but not really a daily living application. The shrug exercise. And then we have feet flattening. The feet flattening, if there's anything wrong with your feet or with the person's feet, there's something wrong with there's something tight about what is it? What's the word? Calves. Always calves. Right? Or muscles around the lower leg. Tibialis anterior, peroneals. Those are usually what the issues are. And you got to remember that. Because remember, the questions are multiple choice, and you just need to remember most of the muscles. One of the muscles that are not very familiar for most people that are listed here that are overactive is the peroneals and the TFL. So if you're not familiar with those muscles, memorize them. It will help you when the feet flatten. Heel rises, right? When they squat, their heels come off the ground. High-heeled shoes or elevated shoes. Most shoes actually have elevation anyway. And last but not least, asymmetrical A shift. Now this one is a doozy, and I will briefly cover it right now, but I want to get more in depth into it in another video if I get enough views and I get enough comments, right? Because this one is a thing that's kind of hard to remember, and if you're a little bit dyslexic like me, you'll forget some stuff. So let me go over here so that I can so asymmetrical A shift. Typically you watch it from the back. This will be easy because my garage is actually a little bit higher than here on the ground here on this side. But you'll get an asymmetrical A shift from the back. And asymmetrical A shift looks sort of like this. I'll exaggerate it a little bit, but they'll come down and then they'll do something like this. And then they'll come back up. Okay? Something like that. That will be an asymmetrical A shift. Sometimes you'll see something like, like almost like a stripper booty wag or something. Come down and then they'll come in and they'll come out. All right, so when they're shifting, so I'm here, we'll just use shifting to, because I have actually asymmetrical A shift to the left. Is that right? Yes, I have asymmetrical A shift to the left. Okay, what's that mean? Asymmetrical A shift to the left means that the side that you're shifting towards, the inner thighs are tight. And the opposite side, the side that you are not shifting towards, the piriformis is tight. Okay, so if I'm doing a squat and I'm asymmetrical shifting to my left, like this, typically what will happen is something like this. Exaggerating quite a bit. And that means this inner thigh is tight, piriformis is tight, right? So they are overactive. So that means you need to train the opposite motion. That way the hips stay straight, everything stays neutral, and you don't jack your body up from squatting all crooked. And the one thing I really need to go over was really overall strength with the body, because there's actually a lot more components that go into this. This is freaking 19 minutes. Well, I'm already 20 minutes. This took me a lot longer than I thought it would. But I got some editing to do. I'm going to post it on bodybuilding.com. Hopefully you guys like it, and I can get some feedback. If you don't like the video, I will never make another NASM video again. If you do like it, click like. If you want some more help, ask me and I'll put some stuff up. I want to talk about external, internal rotation, pronation, supination, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, tight muscles, weak muscles, why your feet need to be forward, why your knees needs to be straight and not out or in. I would like to talk about that stuff. And you know what? My clients don't care about that kind of stuff. They just want to lose weight, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Most people just want to look good. But I love this stuff, and some of you need to pass NASM, and some of you need to understand some of this stuff for your own knowledge to help other people. And I'm a fitness nerd. I like this human movement stuff, and if you have any questions, Click a link, click subscribe, and thanks for watching.